The Story of Samson. When Samson had grown, he went down to the city of Timnah, and at Timnah he saw one of the daughters of the Philistines. Then he told his mother and father, "I saw one of the daughters of the Philistines at Timnah. Now I want her for a wife." But his father and mother answered, "Is there not a woman among the people of Israel, or your kinsmen, that you could take as a wife instead?" But Samson said, "I want the Philistine woman as a wife." His father and mother did not know it, but it was from the Lord that Samson wanted this. For the Lord was seeking to turn Samson against the Philistines. At this time, the Philistines had ruled over Israel for nearly 20 years. Then Samson went down with his parents to Timnah. But as he came by himself to the vineyards of Timnah, a young lion roared against him. But the Spirit of the Lord came upon Samson, and he tore the lion, ripped him in two as one tears a piece of paper with his bare hands. But Samson did not tell his father or mother what he had done to the lion. Then he went down and talked to the Philistine woman, and he liked her very much. After a while, he went back to see her, and stopped and looked at where he had torn the lion in half, and behold, there was a swarm of bees in the lion, and honey. He scraped it out with his hands and went off, eating some, and gave some to his father and mother, although he did not tell them where the honey came from. Samson's father went down to meet the Philistine woman, and Samson made a feast for her, as the young men used to do as a custom. When the Philistines saw this, they brought 30 Philistine companions to celebrate the wedding. And Samson said to them, "Let me tell you a riddle, and if you can tell me the answer within 7 days of the feast, then I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 festal garments. But if you cannot tell me what the answer is, then you shall give me 30 linen garments and 30 festal garments." The 30 Philistine companions answered Samson, "Tell us your riddle, and we will answer it." Samson said to them, "Out of the eater came something to eat, out of the strong came something sweet." The Philistine companions could not tell the answer to the riddle for 3 days. On the 4th day, they went to Samson's wife and said, "You must betray your husband to us. Get him to tell you the answer to the riddle, and tell us, or else we will burn you and your father's house to the ground with fire. Have you invited us here to let your husband steal from us?" Samson's Philistine wife wept before him and said, "You hate me. You do not love me. You have given my countrymen a riddle, and you have not told me the answer." Samson replied, "I have not told the answer to my father or mother either. Shall I tell you?" She wept before him for 7 days, and on the 7th day Samson finally told her, because she pressed him hard. As soon as he told her, she betrayed him and told the answer to the riddle to her Philistine companions. Then the Philistine companions came to Samson on the 7th day and said, "What is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion? That is the answer to the riddle, of course." Samson was furious and answered them, "If you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have found out my riddle." And the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon Samson, and he went down to the town of Ashkelon and killed 30 pagan Philistines in that town, and took their spoil, and gave the festal garments to those who had told the riddle, the 30 Philistine companions. In anger he went back to his father's house. But Samson's Philistine wife was given to one of his Philistine companions instead of Samson. After some time at the wheat harvest, Samson went to visit his wife, and said to her father, "I am going to visit my wife." But her father would not allow him to visit. Her father said, "I thought you utterly hated her, so I gave her to your Philistine companions. Take her younger sister and marry her. She is better instead." Samson was furious and replied, "This time I shall be blameless when I harmed the Philistines." So Samson went and caught 300 foxes and took torches and took them and tied them tail to tail and put a torch between each pair of tails. And when he had set fire to the torches, he let the foxes go into the grains and vineyards of the Philistines. And the foxes, with the torches tied to their tails, burned up the grain and the corn and the olive orchards. And the Philistines were angry and said, "Who has done this?" And they were told, "Samson has done this, because he was angry that his wife had been given to another man." Then the Philistines came up and burned Samson's wife and her father's house with fire. When Samson heard this, he said, "If this is what you do, I swear I will be avenged upon you." And he smote them with great slaughter. After this he went down and hid in a cave in the rock of Etam. Then the Philistines made an army and encamped in Judah and began to attack the Israelites. And the men of Judah said, "Why have you come up against us to attack us? Leave us alone." The Philistines replied, "We have come up to capture Samson and to kill him." Then 3,000 Israelites of Judah went to the rock of Etam, to the cave where Samson was hiding, and said, "Do you not know that the Philistines are rulers over us? Why have you done this? Why have you made them angry?" Samson replied, "As they did to me, so I have done to them." The Israelites said to Samson, "We have come to tie you up and give you as a prisoner to the Philistines." Samson said to them, "Swear to me that you will not kill me yourselves." They swore, "No, we will only tie you up and then give you as a prisoner to the Philistines, but we will not kill you." So they tied up Samson with 2 new, thick, strong ropes and brought him up from the rock. When the Israelites brought Samson up, the Philistines came shouting and laughing. But the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon Samson, and the ropes which were on his arm became as nothing, and he snapped them with his strength. Then, looking around, he saw the bones of a dead donkey lying there, and seizing the jawbone, he put out his hand and slew 1,000 Philistines. And Samson said, "With the jawbone of an ass, heaps upon heaps. With the jawbone of an ass, I have slain 1,000 men." When he had finished speaking, he threw away the jawbone. And he was very thirsty and called out to the Lord, "Lord, you have given great deliverance by the hand of your servant. Now am I to die of thirst?" But God split open the ground, and a spring of water came forth. Samson drank the water, and his spirit was revived. Samson judged Israel in the days of the Philistines for 20 years. But Samson went to the Philistine city of Gaza, and there he saw a prostitute and visited her. The Gazaites were told, "Samson is here." So they surrounded the house where Samson was, and lay in wait for him all night, saying, "Let us wait until the morning, then we will kill him." But Samson lay until the middle of the night, and at midnight he arose and went to the doors of the city, huge gates fixed to the wall with 2 giant posts. But Samson approached them and ripped them right off the stone wall, posts and all, then put them on his shoulders and carried them up to the mountain that faced the city. After this, he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. When the lords of the Philistines found this out, they came to her and said, "Betray Samson to us. Find the secret to his great strength, and how we may deprive him of it, and how we may capture him. If you do this, we will give you 1,100 pieces of silver." So Delilah went to Samson and said, "Samson, tell me where your great strength lies, the secret, and how, if you were tied up, one could capture you." Samson replied with a lie and said, "If they bind me with 7 fresh bowstrings that have not been dried, I shall be as weak as any other man." Quickly the lords of the Philistines brought her 7 fresh bowstrings which had not been dried, just as Samson had described. Delilah brought them with her. She had the Philistines lie in wait in the house. Then she tied Samson with the fresh bowstrings and said, "Samson, the Philistines are here to capture you." But he stood up and snapped the bowstrings as if they were nothing, and the Philistines fled. Then Delilah said to Samson, "Behold, you have mocked me and told me lies. Tell me the secret of your great strength and how you might be captured." Samson lied to her again. "If they bind me with new ropes that have not been used, then I shall become weak and be like any other man." So Delilah took new ropes that had not been used and tied up Samson once again and said, "Samson, the Philistines are here to capture you." And Samson snapped the ropes off his arms as if they were nothing, and the Philistines fled again. Delilah once again came to Samson, saying, "You mock me and tell me lies. Tell me the secret of your strength, how you could be captured." Samson lied to her once more and said, "If you weave the 7 locks of my hair into a web and make it tight with a pin, then I shall become weak like any other man." So while he slept, Delilah took the 7 locks of his head and wove them into a web and tightened them with a pin. Then she cried, "Samson, the Philistines are here to capture you." Once again, Samson jumped up and pulled the pin from his hair, and the Philistines fled. Delilah once more said to him, "How can you tell me you love me when you lie to me and mock me? You still have not told me where your great strength lies and how you might be captured." She pressed him hard with her words day after day and urged him to tell her, until he was sick of it. Then he finally told her the truth and said, "My hair has never been cut, for I am a Nazirite, dedicated to God from my mother's womb. If I were to be shaved and my hair cut, then my strength would leave me and I would become weak like any other man." When Delilah saw that Samson had told the truth, she went to the Philistines and said, "Come at once, for this time he has told me the truth." Then the lords of the Philistines came up with her and brought money to give to her. Delilah waited until Samson was asleep. Then she called the barber and had him shave off Samson's hair. Then, when she saw that his strength had left him, she began to torment him. Finally she cried, "Samson, the Philistines are here!" He woke up and said, "I will attack them as I have the other times." But he did not know his hair was gone and the Lord had left him. And the Philistines captured him and tied him up and gouged out his eyes so that he was blind, and brought him down to the city of Gaza. And there they made him grind wheat into flour in the prison. But after Samson had been in prison for a long time, the Philistines forgot about him, and his hair began to grow once more. Now one day the lords of the Philistines gathered at the temple of their false god Dagon to celebrate. And they said, "Our god Dagon has given Samson, our enemy, into our hands as a prisoner." When the people saw this, they praised their false god and said, "Our god Dagon has given our enemy into our hands, the man who has slain many of us." Then they rose up to celebrate and said, "Call Samson, that we may make fun of him." So they took Samson out of prison and led him into the temple, where 3,000 Philistines were celebrating. The people, the priests of Dagon, the leaders of the Philistines, and many soldiers. They took Samson and made him stand between the pillars that held up the temple, 2 giant stone pillars that were as thick as a giant tree. And Samson said to the servant who held his hands, "Let me feel the pillars on my right and on my left, that I may lean against them." By this time, Samson's hair had grown very long once again. Samson felt the pillars, one on his right and one on his left. Then he prayed to the Lord, "O Lord God, remember me, I pray. Strengthen me, that I may be avenged upon the Philistines one last time." Samson reached for the pillars, one on his right and one on his left, and began to push. And the Spirit of the Lord came upon him and gave him great strength, so that as Samson pushed, the giant stone pillars cracked in half, and the entire temple of the false god Dagon came crashing down and killed every last Philistine within it. But Samson, too, was crushed. His brothers and his family came down and brought him back and buried him in Israel. Samson had judged Israel for 20 years.